I think I think I might make some people angry with this one. If you are just starting out on your journey as a dungeon master, you've probably heard of the contemptuous debate, sandboxing versus story, and the greatest sin a dungeon master can commit, railroading. Well, today I'm going to be sharing my opinion on the topic, and I've been told it's a controversial one. Hopefully, if you are just starting out, you've already heard of this man, Matt Colville. I know I run the risk of leading people away from my channel by directing you to him, but I truly owe so much of my DMing knowledge to Matt. Back when I was first stepping into the DM seat in fall of 2016, his Running the Game playlist had like 8 videos, and I watched them all constantly on a loop, eagerly awaiting the next one. I've been a follower of his ever since, and I've kind of Pavloved myself into automatically mentally preparing for a D&D session just at the sound of his voice. Today, his Running the Game playlist has over 100 videos, ranging over a wide variety of topics, and it's so helpful and beginner-friendly that it has become a staple of the D&D community. Mr. Colville, you have my thanks and undying appreciation. Nothing that I'm about to say changes that. Now, one of his most famous videos is this one, the sandbox versus the railroad.
It was the best of games, it was the worst of games. A tale of two campaigns, the sandbox and the railroad.
In this video, he compares two hypothetical D&D campaigns. One is a sandbox setting, driven completely by the player's actions and choices, forming the story of Tolkien's The Hobbit. And the following campaign is a story on firm, unyielding rails, forcing the story of Lord of the Rings. If you haven't seen this video yet, you should watch it, if only for the entertainment value. He does a good job at that. Now, at the end of the video, Matt compares the two styles of playing, sandbox versus railroad. And based on the hypothetical situations that he lays out, one is obviously better than the other. The sandbox is true D&D and allows for unlimited potential, fun for all involved, guaranteeing a successful campaign. Meanwhile, the railroad style is restricting, demeaning towards players, breaks up campaigns, and caused your parents to divorce. And this isn't just Matt's opinion. The internet itself is loudly anti-railroading, with people writing it off as inexcusable, bad DMing, automatically. But I don't think that's the case. And as entertaining as Matt's video is, I have a lot of issues with it. Now, I am not going to sit here and tell you how to play your game. If you have a sandbox world that is working well for your table and everyone enjoys it, that sounds like you're doing it right, and you should keep going. However, the purpose of this video is to defend those of us who do lean more towards a railroading style. Which is me. I am unashamedly someone who approaches the games I run in a way that is heavily story driven, and I do so without removing agency and choice from my players, and all of us at our table have a good time. Isn't that the point? So let me tell you how it works for me. The guidelines I set up, the way I run my games, what I communicate to my players, all of it. Hopefully, at the end of the video, you'll be able to acknowledge the pros of this style and cut us railroaders a little bit of slack. You might even find that I have some valid points on why a style that leans towards rails has its merits. First, I want to lay out my theory that these are not two opposing options, and that you have to choose one or the other. I look at it as more like a spectrum, with railroading on one end, sandboxing on the other. A campaign can fluctuate between both ends of the spectrum. I think either end is to be avoided, and falling somewhere in the middle is a good aim. When the internet talks about railroading, I think of that as the far end of the spectrum, where a DM might as well be writing a book. They remove all choice from the players, guiding them along on the story of their choosing, like a tour guide down a hallway. Any attempt at straying from the path is met with resistance or flat out refusal. Obviously, this is bad and should be avoided. But on the opposite end, I see a DM who is so focused on letting the players guide the story that they themselves don't have anything prepared. Maybe there's an encounter or a story hook somewhere on the map, but that's the extent of it, with no intention of creating an arc, theme, or a focused narrative. Maybe that sounds like fun to you, and if so, go wild. I see this style of play being especially attractive to the murder hobo style player, or the casual party that just wants to occasionally get together and kill monsters. Like I said before, if you and your group are having fun, you're playing the game correctly. But some of us play it differently. I, like many others, see D&D less as a game and more as a method of storytelling. And as someone who has loved and studied storytelling all of my life, there are specific things that I want and need from the tales and epics that I involve myself in, whether I'm in the driver's seat as the DM or if I'm just one of the players. Let's talk about those narrative pillars that aren't typically found in a sandbox game. First is story structure. If you want your D&D campaign to feel like an epic tale and not just wandering around fighting bigger and bigger baddies, you're going to want to have a story structure. I'll talk more about that in a later video, but simply put, you want a beginning, middle, and end. Oftentimes in a continuous campaign, your players will have many of these arcs within their adventures, but when they zoom out and look at the larger picture, do they see the same structure? I think they should. Every story that has ever inspired you to be a fantasy hero follows this formula. Why wouldn't your D&D game? Second is character growth. An internal character arc is, for many people, just as important as an external adventure plotline. When crafting your campaign, you want to come up with challenges and situations that will inspire change and growth in the characters at the table. Without a guided story, you're risking randomness in what your players interact with and how it affects their characters. This may lead to characters with fluid goals or morals, and worst of all, characters who have little to no attachment to the world. With a focused plot, you can create a narrative that is built not only to personally challenge the characters, but to highlight and empower them as well. Third is theme. An overarching theme is paramount to tying a story together and can be such a helpful tool for guiding a narrative and connecting various arcs. In a sandbox-style game, the sporadic playstyle makes it difficult to connect one hook to another, resulting in an episodic adventure without any true through line outside of the characters themselves. Adding a theme to a story-led adventure gives your table a guide for tone, intention, focus, and much more. Each of the campaigns that I have run have had themes to them, and my current game, that's been running for almost 5 years, has had the theme Chaos. This hasn't meant no theme, it's more about the forces of chaos in nature and magic. Anyways, a theme is a simple and subtle tool to make an entire campaign feel cohesive. So those are a few narrative pillars that come with a story-driven game. I'm not saying they're impossible to achieve in a sandbox style, but I think it would be a challenge. And there are plenty of other benefits to a campaign on Rails. One of the obvious pros was put beautifully just recently by Mr. Zach Oyama. Take it away.
What is if we're doing Railroad versus Sandbox, what is the benefit of Railroad to you? What is it you love about Railroad?
Benefit of railroading. As a DM, I don't have to think of that much shit. Quality of life. Quality of life.
Quality of life. The only real man out there. The only person actually saying it how it fucking is. I don't got fucking time for this.
I come from a narrative writing background of I written for TV shows and things where you write the thing and that's the thing that happens. You don't write a bunch of possibilities and then
and throw most of them out.
I think, you just have to prepare so much as a DM. So as a DM, I don't care. You're doing this thing.
Now, that's slightly hyperbolic, but he has a point there. Knowing what the adventure is and where it's going does significantly lessen the work that you have to do as a DM. This doesn't mean that your players can't surprise you and come up with a roundabout solution to a problem, or suddenly decide they're going to consult the wizard NPC 2 towns over. If they do, it is your job as a DM to not shut them down, but to roll with that. Part of the game involves random results and improvisation, after all. But a story-led campaign lets you, the DM, decide what you want to prepare, instead of having an entire map for players to throw darts at and hope you can keep up. On that topic, I've found that a story-driven adventure can increase player trust in the DM. Sure, some players want to run wild in a world, but others, especially first-time players, want to feel that there is a plan in place, and that they are being guided along in an adventure where they matter. Players want to know that what they're doing is going to have an impact. In fact, in the same video that I just showed, Brennan Lee Mulligan says something rather poignant.
And I've even said this before, like the goal of these fantasy worlds for me is not just to be in Middle-earth, it's to be in the Fellowship.
It's sentiments like these that show the true power of establishing a story-driven campaign that may be driven by your players, but is also creating the story that they want to be in. After all of this, I hope we are on the same page. There are benefits to running a game in a style that leans more towards Rails. Now, let's talk about how you do this without removing player agency. First, and honestly, this is the solution to 9 out of 10 table issues. Talk to your players. Tell them straight up, I'm planning on running a game that is story-based, with a guided plot and overarching themes of X, Y, and Z. I guarantee you that most players will say, that sounds awesome, I'm in. From there, discuss with them the plot that you have in mind and how the characters that they're thinking about playing can fit into it. Now, I'm not saying that you need to spoil everything that you have in mind for your level 1 to 20 epic, but tell them enough to give them a good idea of what you're expecting. Like, I want to run a post-apocalyptic wasteland exploration campaign, where the party slowly pieces together the cause of the fallout. Once you do, you'll have to choose whether or not you try to undo it, or make peace with where the world is. Both sides will have powerful figures working for and against them. Or, I'm planning on doing a fantasy retelling of the movie Inception, but instead of going into layers of dreams, the party will instead be diving deeper and deeper into levels of the hells on their heist. Both of these examples tell the player a rough outline of the story that the DM is planning, which can be helpful in staying on rails as the campaign progresses. But they don't give away any of the twists and turns that the Game Master might have in mind, or give away the big bad at the end, or anything that I would consider spoilers. If anything, these tidbits of information help the player identify the tone of the campaign, and more easily put together a character that is well suited for the setting. Talking to your players about where the story is and where it's going doesn't have to be something that you only do at the start of the campaign, either. I regularly check in with my players about what's going on, what their character is experiencing, and where we both see things leading. I make sure that we're on the same page, and if not, I'm going to listen to what they're expecting. That leads me into my next piece of advice for retaining player agency. Make sure that whatever the players bring to the table fits into your narrative. If it doesn't fit, make it. This is big when considering the backstories that your players come up with. Consider a player's backstory as them handing you a piece of paper that literally says, this is what I'm interested in. This is what excites me about the game and this character. Because that's what it is. They are giving you a part of the world that they want to interact with. Make sure you include it. Then, throughout the adventures, make sure you're listening to the things that interest your party. If you throw in a wacky NPC that they love, make them more relevant. If those ancient ruins that you added for flavor strike their curiosity, make sure that location has some plot significance. As much as you are guiding the story, make sure to leave room for the things that your friends tell or show you that they're interested in. Lastly, be flexible. I mentioned earlier that players might go off the rails, doing something you didn't expect. Allow that, don't fight it. This game is largely improv, and if you can't embrace that, it might not be the game for you. Go with the flow, and I promise that you'll find a way back to the narrative you have in mind sooner or later. And in my experience, if you don't find the way back, my players often do it for me. So when I play D&D, I have a rough outline of a story in mind. A beginning, middle, and end to each arc, as well as the same overarching structure throughout, with a theme tying it all together. I share this with the group I'm playing with so that they know my intentions and playstyle. From there, I let their actions and decisions and interests guide the story, trying my best to keep it inside the established guidelines, or rails. If we get off track, I have to go with the flow and enjoy the detour, knowing that we'll find our way back to the rails when we can. Is this railroading? Some would say yes. Others might say, kinda, but not exactly. Is running a pre-written campaign railroading? What about when your players are doing nothing but flirting with the tavern maid for an hour and a half, and you have to have a pack of gnolls attack the inn just to get things moving? Railroading might be looked down upon in our community, but its definition fluctuates more than most people acknowledge, which is why I propose we add 2 new terms to this spectrum. If railroading and sandbox are at opposite ends, then I would say in the middle we have leading and following. On one side, the DM is leading the players along their established narrative, whether it's a story of the DM's creation or a pre-written adventure. On the other side, the players have a more open world approach to the setting, and the Dungeon Master is keeping up to the best of their abilities. And the very middle is, true neutral. That's what I've got for this video. Hopefully you can see some benefit to this style of play, and you have a good idea of how to do this without removing player agency. At the very least, I hope you won't berate someone online for following a structured story in their D&D game that you're not involved in. Thanks for listening, guys. See you next time, and from one DM to another, have a structured session. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy this video, please go ahead, like, and subscribe, you know the drill. But the best way that you can support this channel is by following the link in the video description and going to where you can buy my book on the subject of witches. This is a young adult, dark, whimsical fantasy inspired by a character that I played in a D&D adventure. If you like things spooky, Halloween-inspired, Studio Ghibli vibes, really anything such as that, you are going to love this book. Similarly, if you like this awesome shirt that I have on, you should look at the other link in the video description and visit the TeeTurtle website. They have some amazing sales going on during the holiday season, and they have fantastic shirts just like this for fantasy nerds like you and me, and I'm sure they'll be giving me a sponsorship any day now. TeeTurtle, I love your products. Thank you so much for watching the video. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.